Moment here where we're going to create a new entity. I do not have any more authority than any of you do in this moment. I'm going to request, fellow ladies and gentlemen, that you give me the authority to get this meeting off and running, and then once we have a president of this board, I will hand off to that person. But in the moment, Allie said she could do it, but I'm offering my services here for the next few minutes to run the beginnings of this, if you are all okay with that.
You're waving a gavel.
I am waving a gavel. Okay, so with that, the meeting will come to order. Allie, could you call roll?
Yes. Benson Wong.
Here.
Thomas Sen. Debbie Britland.
Here.
Dan Grouse.
Here.
Bruce Bassett.
Here.
Jane Meyer-Braum.
Here.
Mike Zero.
He's nearby, but he's not here.
Can't be
All right, the order of events here is not, so appearances will wait until we are actually formed as a board. What we're going to do is the regular business of adopting a charter, adopting bylaws, and then once we have those in place, we have the ability to elect a president. We'll hand off to whoever the president is. That person will handle the election of a vice president. We will then move to appearances, and then the business of the evening. And over to Christina at that point. Except we need you for bylaws and charter as well. So the first order of business is to adopt. I really do feel like I'm herding cats here tonight. The first order of business is to adopt a charter. And so, Christina, do we go to you and you walk us through that?
Yes, actually we prepared just an overview presentation of what happens tonight. So I will cover the charter, the bylaws, election of officers, and the fee ordinance all at once. And when you have questions, at the end of the presentation, we are here to answer any questions you may have. And then we'll walk through like the mayor just said, or the presiding officer of the TBD just said, for this evening. Okay. So tonight, as you know, is the first meeting of the Transportation Benefit District, or the TBD. Per state law, all of you as city council members are now the governing body of the TBD. And as you know, the TBD is an independent taxing authority, and before it can act, we need the governance in place. The charter, the bylaws, elect officers, and then you can act and adopt the fee ordinance. And per statute, I will just note that Chip Corder, the city's finance director, will act as the TBD treasurer. And as I mentioned, we'll give a brief presentation and then available to answer questions. So the charter. The TBD charter grants the authority or rights to the governing body of the TBD. It's modeled, the staff created it by modeling it after charters and other TBDs in the state. What it addresses is the name of the TBD, the nature and purpose, how it dissolves, the powers, and the board of directors, the meetings, and amendments to the charter. And at this point, I would just like to add that I would suggest a slight change in Section 502 after looking through it and doing some grammatical research today. I would like to suggest the change, which is on the screen, under Board of Directors, Section 502, and change the language to the board shall consist of, instead of saying the board shall be composed of. Just a small change there I would like to suggest. So that's the charter. What the charter covers next is the bylaws. Now the bylaws are more specific operating rules and regulations. And so they cover and set forth the officers of the TBD, which we propose to be the president, vice president, and then again by state laws there is a treasurer. It allows committees. It sets forth the meeting procedure, how it's noticed, the procedure of the meetings, and public comment. And then it also covers how to amend the bylaws and the record keeping. And TBD officers. After you adopt the charter and bylaws, you will elect officers. And the bylaws, as written now, specify the election. Actually, the bylaws specify the elections at the first TBD meeting, which is tonight. Then, after you're all set up, you can take action, and that first action is to pass the TBD fee ordinance. That's ordinance number 1, and what it does is sets the vehicle license fee at $20. It requires a majority vote to pass. This is per state law. And one thing to just address here, if you wanted to increase the fee in the future, of course, you can do so with voter approval, or without voter approval, if, let's say, the state legislature would increase the amount set, which is capped at $20 right now, without voter approval, you would need to pass a new fee ordinance to establish a higher fee. If adopted tonight, the Department of Licensing would start collecting the fees on June 1st, 2015. And at this point, I would like to suggest another small change of the ordinance, and that is to remove, in Section 1, it would remove the reference to RCW 4616, just at the very end of that sentence. So, before you tonight, your actions are to adopt the charter of the Mercer Island Transportation Benefit District, and if you agree with my change, it would be as amended. Adopt the bylaws of the Mercer Island Transportation Benefit District, elect officers, and adopt ordinance number 1, and then with that small change I mentioned, as amended. Looking ahead just briefly, after tonight, the TBD needs to take a few extra steps, and that one is to adopt 3 interlocal agreements. That's between the City of Mercer Island and the TBD, and that's for staff support, between the Department of Licensing, so they can collect the vehicle license fees, and then with WCIA, the Washington City's Insurance Authority, who is the insurance carrier, and that would be for errors, omissions, and liability insurance. And then per state law, you also need to adopt a material change policy. And what that does is addresses how you will handle major plan changes that affect project, like the delivery or financing or project costs. So those come later, but just wanted to lay those out there. But again, actions for tonight: charter, bylaws, officers, and ordinance. I'm happy to take any questions as you move through the process.
Thank you. Questions right now? Anyone?
So we're going to have another special meeting, I assume, then we're not going to wait till April, I guess, is the next scheduled meeting?
That's correct.
Okay.
I've got some questions.
Go ahead.
So if we were to approve for more than $20, then it would go to the voters. If we approved it for $25, then it would go to, the TBD would go to the voters. Is that what you're
Right,
saying?
you'd have to take it to the voters first, so maybe you wouldn't.
I mean, we could do it here. We could do it here at this setting, approve it for $25, and then staff would say, okay, it's $25. It's got to go to the voters, and off you go.
I'm not sure that you have the authority to actually pass an ordinance that would, I would say that an ordinance for $25 passed tonight would probably be unlawful outside of your authority, so I think you'd have to go to the voters first. The voters are the one who would set higher than the $20.
So how would I do that? How would I make an amendment like that?
I think...
May I suggest, Mike, we've got several steps to get through here. You're kind of working on step 3. We've got to get through our charter and bylaws, and then we'll be into this question which you're drilling down on, which is what sort of a tax rate.
Okay, Mr. Mayor.
Would you mind waiting?
I will.
Okay. Go ahead. So we're focused on charter at the moment. Okay.
Well, I was just going to, there's just a very, very minor punctuation issue in bylaws, but I thought maybe just from a housekeeping perspective I'd call it out. So if you go to Article 3, meetings, Section 3.1, regular board meetings, regular board meetings shall be held at 6 p.m. on the first Monday of April each year, and the first Monday of October of even-numbered years. There's then a period, and it says, in the City of Mercer Island City Council Chamber, period. So I think there's just an additional period.
Spare period.
Yep.
So, how am I going to do it? You've seen the...
I'm going to suggest a motion to adopt the charter, and then at that point we would take proposed amendments to the charter.
Okay.
So if someone were game for making that motion, that would get us rolling on trying to get through the amendments.
Okay. I move to adopt the charter of the Mercer Island Transportation Benefit District.
Second.
Second.
Okay, so it's moved and seconded. And Jane, go ahead with your question.
Christina, I had a question about Section 2.02B, that the purpose is, the primary purpose is providing for transportation improvements that are, number B, necessitated by reasonably foreseeable congestion levels. Is that language from the state?
Yes.
It seems to not apply here. I mean, it seems irrelevant to Mercer Island, or less important, perhaps.
I wish you were right.
Well,
I hope you're right.
I don't think, well, I mean, it's tied
Let me
to
suggest that
congestion.
you're making an observation, which is,
No, well, I was asking for the source of that language,
Okay,
which,
yeah.
and I got the answer. Thank you.
yeah, okay. Okay, Benson and Mike, I think you both had potential amendments to this, and Tawny, you've got something too. So let's try and get into this. We've got a lot to cover here, and I want to try and keep us moving as quickly as we can, okay? So anybody want to offer up their amendments, and let's dive into that.
I had them in written form, so. Okay. Some are housekeeping matters, but there are a few that would require some change in the language. So do you want me to go one by one, or is it pretty self-explanatory, or?
Is this the first time most council members are seeing this? I did have a preview of this, so, okay, Benson, walk us through it.
Okay, so this again pertains to the charter. So number one is simply a comma that I think is probably not necessary. Again, not a big issue, but again, something that I just wanted to point out. On section 5.02, we've already talked about changing the word composed to consist of. And then on section 5.02 as well, I had problems with the language as drafted, and so basically, the original language talks about a member may be removed. The understanding that I have is that simply, in order to qualify to be a member of the board of the TBD, you have to be a city council person. So I changed it to simply state that if you're no longer a member of the Mercer Island City Council, you cease to be a member of the board of the TBD. And then in section 5.03, again, there was some redundant language in, or what I felt was unnecessary language in the third and fourth sentences, and so I made also a change in the first sentence. Section 602, again, I felt that there was some unnecessary language. That one pertained to the issue of quorum. I found it kind of confusing. I thought simply stating that a quorum is four persons of the board was sufficient. And then lastly, section 6.05 is simply because the word or phrase governing body is never used in the charter, so I just reference back to the board, which is used throughout the charter.
So if I could, I guess my only concern with what Councilmember Long has suggested is that in his quotation partway down his page is eligible to serve on the BARD, and I didn't think we wanted to serve on the BARD, but rather on the board. Other than that, I think all of the changes you proposed seemed to me to be just of not of a changing intent nature, but of a clarity nature. Christina, you looked at these. Would you give the same assessment of this?
Yes, and we discussed these, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just curious, I mean, I was going to mention this, but as long as you're going to be amending things, why do you have the officers in both the charter and the bylaws? You just duplicate the language. Because what Benson has put in here says the officers is designated in the bylaws, and then we proceed in the charter to go and talk about, in 504, 505, and 506, we talk about the officers. Why don't we just delete those completely and just do it in the bylaws the way it would be per Benson's amendment? It makes more sense to do that.
I think you can do that. I think you can be more specific in the bylaws and be more general in the charter, but
I mean, it's verbatim. The bylaws are actually verbatim, 504, 505, 506. That same language appears in the bylaws right now. I think. Doesn't that make sense?
Makes sense. Yeah.
So I would also suggest just delete 504, 505, 506.
Okay, so let's deal with Benson's amendment first, though, just so that we don't end up with complete chaos here.
Oh, come on.
Yeah.
You're not
So I'm looking for comments on Benson's proposed changes right now so that we can deal with a thumbs up, thumbs down on this amendment. Tana?
Just because Councilmember Warren has pointed out commas, I would add a comma under his amendment under Section 5.02B after the word council. When a Mercer Island City Council member ceases to be on the Mercer Island City Council, comma. And then also just making sure that however we say council member, that it's consistent. So whether it's 2 words or 1 word, however we use it, that it's just consistent throughout.
I'm going to assume that both my Bard and Tana's comments are within the realm of Scribner error, and that we can just proceed with the larger question of whether Benson's amendments are accepted, or his amendment with multiple elements is accepted or not. Any other comments as to that? Debbie's ready to throw a thumbs up, thumbs down. All in favor of the amendment with its minor...
Can I just get a second to the amendment?
Oh, there was one, I believe, but no, there wasn't one.
I'll second.
Okay, very good. Thank you. All in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right. Mike, you have amendments as well. Well, no, yeah, you get to go next, and then we'll go to Tana and then to Dan, because I know all of you have got things you want to do to change this at this point.
Please. All right, so the first one I identified was on page 3, which would be 5.01B, change from a majority vote to 2/3. How do you want me to go through them all and then?
You know, Mike, you can do them as individual amendment motions or proposals if you like, or lump them together the way Benson did. It's kind of your call. I
Okay,
think.
then I'd like to make an amendment that we change 5.01 paragraph B and add 2/3 after A on that first line.
Is there a second?
Just second it, gets clarified.
Yeah.
If I understand, thank you, Councilmember Berlin, if I understand that you're giving a majority of the board permission to remove somebody from their position, from a council member from the position? That seems like a low threshold for such a monumental move. If I understand that paragraph correct.
And I would actually maybe jump in and clarify that a board member cannot be removed. So a board officer, an agent or employee. So this addresses an officer, agent, and employee. And you are correct that it just is a majority vote as written.
But the wording is, I think
It's
Mike's
very
point
weird
is
wording.
the very beginning of that doesn't
Confusing.
say that. So if you if you deleted from his or her position on the board, you'd get that result. So to appoint or remove by, at the pleasure of a 2/3 or majority vote of the board, the district's officers, agents, and employees.
Yeah, you're suggesting remove from his/her position on the board.
Right.
If you remove that portion
Yeah.
of it, it becomes clear.
Yeah. Are you okay with that, Mike?
I'm okay with that.
So then leave it at majority if you're
Leave it
going to...
majority?
That's not talking about us.
No.
Right.
Yeah,
It's
that's
opposite.
fine, I'm fine with that.
Okay, so I just need a motion then to delete that clause. How do we do this? I need a withdrawal of the former motion?
No, just vote on the 2/3. Just ask for a vote on the 2/3.
And then fail that? And then-
Yeah,
okay.
we'll go.
All in favor of changing this to a 2/3 majority, or adding the
Five.
2/3 RD to this 5.01B, signify by saying aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Nay. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I have an amendment I'd like to, on section 5.01AB, delete from his/her position on the board.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, that's moved and seconded. Discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, that's
Mr.
carried.
Mayor, I'd like to make an amendment to Article 4, Section 6.01, change even to odd on the second line.
Is there a second?
What is that?
I'll second it, because I'm curious why.
Thank you, Councilmember Berlin. I think it's important that we do the business, the important business that this TBD will do under the shadow of an election year. I don't like the optics of doing this in a non-election year. Obviously, we get elected in the odd years. I think it is a good accountability and really forces us to really be circumspect on any projects or additional taxes that we may entertain during the odd years, which are in sync with our election cycle.
Christine, could you speak to why it was put
Yes,
the other way it was?
I'm going to have Francie speak to that.
Okay.
We were simply trying to align decision-making for the TBD with the budget cycle. So it seemed to us that at the same time that you were making decisions on how your street funds are spent, it would make sense to, at that point, define what projects are going to be funded by the TBD.
Okay. Anyone want to speak to the amendment before we vote on it?
Well, I can, and I appreciate that for the bookkeeping, certainly the bookkeeping part of making a budget, but you do have the added benefit of the added transparency and the check and balance that conducting changes to the TBD with the shadow of an election.
Anyone else? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. Okay, motion fails.
Okay, I'm not going to thank you on that one, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, on Section 6.05, which is on the 5th page, I'd like to delete cost and replace it with bid, and delete 20 and change it with 5.
So from 20 to 5% versus 20 to 50%.
Right, and cost, the bid versus the cost of a project.
And it's 5, not, or is it 50?
It's at 5%.
5,
Yeah.
okay.
5%.
5.
Okay.
I'll second that for discussion. It's an interesting concept.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Grouse. So, think about the process of the fire station, for instance. By the time we review cost to engineering estimate, it's too far gone. From a practical perspective, it's too far gone. The time when we can implement change or execute change is after the engineering estimate, and then when we receive the bids. I mean, if we're comparing cost to engineering estimate, the city's already on the hook. The work has already been done. And then as far as the 20%, 20% is extremely high, extremely high. And the case in point that I use for that is, look at where we, again, are with the fire station. Our original bid from Miller Hall, I think it was the engineering estimate, the original engineering estimate from Miller Hall is $4.4 million. And as of the November 2013, we were up to $5.4 million, which still wouldn't trip the 20% threshold, because that's only 19%.
Francie, you ready to
Yeah,
give us a perspective?
just respond with a couple of things. Bid law is pretty specific, and once you go out to bid, you really are in a position of accepting the most responsive and responsible bidder and/or rejecting all bids. You can certainly review if bids are over by 5%, but you're still under the state bid law in how you respond. I think that this intent is to set your charter. We will actually bring back the material change policy. This is saying at a minimum, you need to review if costs exceed by 20%. You will have the chance to define exactly what you want to have come back to you in that material change policy, which we'll bring back at your next special meeting. Let's see. I think that's it.
Okay. Mike, you want to say something?
Well, I mean, again, if it's cost to engineering estimate, we are ineffectual because we're already committed. There's no reason why we can't add the comparison being cost estimate to 5% is what we want to review, and then we'll be briefed upon the legal issues of accepting or not being able to accept the bids given out. I mean, that's still, but just to not give us that check in the system, I don't think is correct. I don't think it's right. We want that check. We want to be relevant early in the process.
Okay. So I saw Debbie and then Tana and then Vincent. Go ahead.
So for me, it's a point of clarification. So if I carry us through the sequence, in essence, we'll have the TIP with a list of projects that are on it, and then at some point we will decide which element of the TIP is funded by TBD funds. So am I right so far? Okay. So then, whether it's 5 or 20, this particular condition would only apply to the project designated for TBD funding. It would not carry over to every single project in the TIP. Okay, thank you.
And just to continue with that line of reasoning, I'm not sure that the changing the word cost and makes sense, because in the event that a transportation improvement bid exceeds its rental, we're talking about the bids. So you could have your friend Bob submit a bid that was 5% over just in order to kill and it would be a bid, one of 30, even though we're not going to take that one because it's too high, we're going to have to take the lowest one. I don't think that, that the way it's written makes sense to have it be a bid. In the event that a transportation improvement bid, not one that we've accepted, not one anything like that, but just a bid is that far over, we would have to have a public hearing that would basically just stymie the entire process. So I don't think it makes sense. I understand the intent, but I don't think
You'd say, would you change A to the transportation improvement?
The minimum in the event that the bid we accept exceeds its original cost estimate.
I mean, I don't want to...
I think it's monkeying with this, so.
I would add at this point that this language is from the statute, is from the material change policy part of the RCW, and again, reminds you of the public bidding laws, which could be problematic if we change that word.
This is verbatim from the RCW,
Yeah.
that sentence?
Yeah, it is. I was going to point that out. So
Okay, so we don't have a choice in the matter.
Well, it does say it's at a minimum, so I think Mike's point is, the concern, or at least the consideration will be when the policy is presented to the TBD board, that's when you don't have to rely on the 20%. You can have a lower amount.
But the point is that this particular sentence has to be in there, and then the bidding is a completely different concept, which we will have to cover when we do the material change policy. If this is from the RCW, Mike, then you need to have that sentence in there. You can argue whether you need to have this sentence talking about cost and cost estimate, and that sentence has to be in there.
Well, next time, please present this stuff on the stuff we can change and the stuff that we can't change, in purple or pink or something like that.
Fair enough.
All right?
Okay, so
I mean, I don't want to waste my time on this stuff.
no, you're right.
All right. All in favor of this amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay.
Nay.
Okay. Motion fails. Tana, you had a proposed amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On page 4, section 6.01, when we're talking about the board meetings, I just think that having the first Monday of April of each year is a little bit constricting, given that in case that falls on the spring break or Passover or some other holiday. I just was suggesting some alternative language. I asked our Assistant City attorney to suggest some, just to make it a little bit more flexible in case something arises, so that we're not bound by, in our charter, on the first Monday of the year.
I actually discussed that with Francie a little bit after I spoke with you, and I have a couple of thoughts. I mean, we could do some language. One thought is, you could say on the first or third Monday of April, if you wanted to specify it, keep it specific. And that way, if there was a holiday or a school break that would impact attendance, we can move it then. The other is just to leave it as is. Another idea is to leave it as is, and then if a holiday or a school break happened to fall on that, we could simply follow the notice provisions and reschedule it at that point. Another option is kind of what we discussed, to change the language to say something like on the first Monday of April, unless there's, I mean, you could be really specific, or we could say something a little bit, I think it's a little more vague to say something like available Monday.
Can you say in April, the month of April?
You could just say that. You could keep it vague.
Just say the month.
How about on Monday in April?
On a Monday in April.
Monday in April?
The only trick about that is when we look at the bylaws, I think the bylaws sort of contemplate that we have regular meetings already set and that you don't have to give notice for it, so that's something we would have to tweak.
Okay, so then maybe
response to
first or third Monday in April?
Well, I might add that some of my amendments on the bylaws were announcing that when the meetings would be. So that would, if you just said sometime in April, and then you have a notification process in the bylaws, you've got that covered.
Right, you could tweak that provision to make notice for each regular meeting as well.
Tony, you've presented an issue. Can you boil it down to an amendment?
Yes, thank you. I would suggest that, I'd like to amend section 6.01 to read, regular board meeting shall be held on a Monday in the month of April each year.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, over to you. Tony, did you have anything else?
No.
Okay, Dan, to you.
Okay, so just following up what I said before, I'd move to, in section 503, delete everything beginning with the second sentence, delete sections 504, 505, 506, and renumber 507 and 508 to be 504 and 505 respectively.
Second.
And that does absolutely nothing to change anything here, except that it avoids repeating the same thing in the charter and the bylaws. Every word that's in that sentence in 503 and 504, 505, 506 is already in the bylaws, and it's consistent then with Benson's earlier amendment to the first sentence of 503.
Christina, any legal heartburn?
I just want a clarification. You said keep the second sentence, the same person shall not occupy.
No, delete that. Delete everything beginning with the second sentence, because that's also in the bylaws already.
Question, or do we need a second? Question?
What?
Do we need
It's
a
been
second?
seconded,
Okay,
yeah.
sorry. I don't think in the bylaws it mentions that the treasurer is the,
Yeah, it's section 2.2, second sentence.
oh, thank you.
So, Christine, you're okay with it?
I think that's fine.
Oh, that's a major, that's a major thing we're doing.
It shortens it and just makes it consistent.
I agree with the
Benson's
brevity,
argument.
but I mean,
Section 5.03 will just read, the board shall include 2 or more officers.
Yeah, as designated in the bylaws, because that was Benson's amendment previously.
Oh, right.
I mean, you almost have to do that, because if you're going to say you're going to take Benson's amendment, then you really can't delineate the officers in the charter, because then it's inconsistent.
Okay, we have motion second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We're back to the original motion to adopt this charter. Is there any other discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Aye. Motion carries. So motion to adopt the bylaws of the Transportation District.
I move to adopt the bylaws of the Mercer Island Transportation Development District.
Second.
Okay, so now, proposed amendments to that. Benson, you have some, Mike, you have some, or maybe Benson, you don't, I'm not sure.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Again, it's at the bottom of the sheet that was handed out, just one proposed amendment to section 3.7. I had conversations with our assistant city attorney, and I just had questions regarding the order of the items 1 through 4, and I just had difficulty understanding it, so I made a proposed change that you see at the bottom. As far as the material change policy, there is a discussion in the RCWs about what that should consist of. There is no definition of what a material change policy is, but there is a general discussion about it. But again, you can just see that I've just proposing a change in the order in some language that I think makes it a little bit more clear.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay.
So does this limit, I don't understand the purposes here, and I am hesitant if somebody can explain why it's there, and does it limit public comment? How does it limit public comment? It must limit public comment, otherwise it wouldn't be there.
It doesn't limit public comment. It specifies when it shall occur. It specifies when public comment shall be required. You can allow it any other time as well, but these are the main events or actions where it is required. And one of them, I think now is 2 and 3, a material change policy, and any response to that material change, actually the RCW requires a public hearing on that. If it's over 20%, the threshold of 20%.
And here again, my own comment would be that I think Benson's changed this not with the intent of changing the intent of it, but with simply an eye towards making it a little bit more readable from his perspective. So
From my perspective, anyway.
Yeah, I'm fine with it.
Okay.
I'm fine with it either way. Anyone else? All right, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Mike?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make an amendment on section 2.2, the first page, change the 2 instances of 1 to 2.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay.
Thank you, Councilmember Braun. 2 is 2 years. That's more consistent with the way we do business. Our terms are, we have a new council every 2 years, and that's kind of a flushing of new ideas and whatnot, and new people on different, the mayor, that's a prerogative of the mayor. The mayor kind of reshuffles things. The 1 year is at a stride with the council.
Christina, any reason you would tell us we should do 1 rather than 2?
No, I don't think so, but I would just make a clarifying point that you are a different entity as the TBD, and so I do understand aligning them with what you do as city council, but I would also caution that you are a separate governing body.
So if you're going to make that change, Mike, you also have to change this phrase before it to say regular meeting each even-numbered year.
I'm sorry, where are you?
Just before that first 2, is each even-numbered year.
The first regular meeting, each even-numbered year.
Okay.
All right, any discussion, further discussion? I'm assuming that that is added to your motion. Discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Onward, Mike.
Okay, I'm assuming 3.6, it's, again, it's, let's see,
3.1.
section,
I'm just looking at your next red, which is 3.1.
Oh, yeah.
oh, yeah, okay, 3.1, I will skip the first correction, or first amendment that I wanted, just so we don't have to go through that painful exercise again. And on section 3.1, I'd like to make the amendment to append regular board meetings will be televised and recorded at the end of that paragraph.
Second.
Mike, you get to speak to it.
That is such a commonsensical amendment, I'm not even going to say a thing about it.
I have a little bit of heartburn about that, because I know we've had times when our televising capabilities have gone asunder on us, and I wonder whether we want to have the gears of progress grind to a halt when they do, because the minimum basic requirement is that we have an open public meeting and that we have minutes that come after the meeting, and those are the things that, at a minimum, everybody expects. More than that is certainly good, and I think we are all in favor of it, but do we want to require it here, is the question I would
Just
raise.
add, where possible, when possible.
So that,
I'm comfortable with that, Mr. Mayor.
So that an amendment to amendment?
Yep.
I'll second the amendment to amendment.
okay, so all in favor of the amended amendment? Ally, stop me if I can.
Yeah, since Councilmember Sarah made the first motion, if Councilmember Sen agrees to that, you can just amend your amendment, so we don't have to do an amendment to an amendment.
Got it.
Let the record show that Councilmember Sen nodded.
All right, so it becomes regular board meetings will be televised and recorded when possible. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Section 3.2, I would like to delete any place and at any time and ever, in the word whenever, and replace it with the City of Mercer Island City Council chambers.
Second.
Mike, you want to speak to it?
Yeah.
Okay. You don't have to.
Place and
You don't have to.
Come on.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Section 3.3, delete no.
We can read it, why don't you?
Okay, thank you. And then,
Well, he needs to say it.
do I have?
Yeah,
Okay. Delete no and delete following required, the comma, except for the first regular meeting after any change in the time or place of such meeting adopted by resolution of the board as above provided.
Second.
I'm still here.
Let's do one at a time.
You want to do one? Okay.
Mike, you're going to stand on the stop there?
Well,
Okay.
it doesn't matter. I'm for going through that whole paragraph.
Then,
I'll take your recommendation.
Okay.
okay, so you've proposed an amendment. Dan has seconded it. Christina, can you tell us why, what the logic behind this is? If, Mike, you don't mind me superseding your...
No, that's fine.
Okay.
So the logic is we would set the actual dates of the regular meetings, and so we wouldn't have to issue separate notice if the meeting dates were already set for regular meetings, unless they were changed. It's a simplifying the...
But now that we took Tana's amendment, we have to give notice anyway, so it's sort of irrelevant.
At least for April.
Yeah. Well, for the good...
Regardless, it's just a good idea
Yeah.
to give them notice.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
Anything? No? You're okay with it?
I'm okay with it.
Okay. Anyone else? Everybody in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Go on, Mike.
Okay, so continuing on there, delete such changed, comma, personal communication over the telephone, and replace it with making meetings plural, and email after by.
Second.
Thank you, Councilmember Braun. I think that's the way we do business, is by email, and email is more, I mean, if you call my number that's in the phone book, nobody will ever answer the landline.
Okay.
Can we just, maybe just say, take out by email and by personal communication, just notice a regular meeting shall be given to each board member, so then if, in case electricity's down, we have to call, but just say that we have to give notice, period, and not specify a means of communication?
We need an emergency meeting.
I'm just saying, I agree, but it just seems, I mean, who knows, maybe in the future there'll be no email and it'll be texting, I don't know, but it just seems laughable now that it says telephone, and imagine later it might be laughable to say email, I don't know.
Well, the rest is postage.
So, folks, we're at 6:50. You're killing me here. You're just killing me. Mike, you've made the motion. Has it been seconded?
Yes.
Jane did. Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Onward.
And then remaining on sections 3.3, add through after meetings and social media sites after island, notice or email.
Is there a second? All right. That dies for lack of a second. Onward.
Section 3.4, add email to mail, and board member, and let's see, how am I going to say that? Delete that comma, and to the instead of each, and after newspaper, comma, City of Mercer Island social media sites, after notice, through, delete, in, add email instead of writing. I think that just gets us back to the 21st century stuff.
Second.
Discussion?
I would like to say, although the newspaper is becoming less and less relevant, unfortunately, the social media sites have the added advantage that we're specifying the social media, and that it's pushing the information out to our citizens, which should be a positive.
Discussion?
Do we know what social media sites means in this context? I have no idea.
I thought about that, and
Twitter.
you might want to say the...
City doesn't have any social media sites as such.
Well, sure they do.
Well, we have accounts in social media sites.
I'm willing for wordsmithing on that.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to skip 3.6. Yeah, section 3.8, I'd like to delete either and delete or by electronic means.
Is there a second?
Ooh, that's an important one, guys.
I'm going to second it because I'm...
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Berlin. I mean, hey, do your job and show up to the meeting, right?
Because we can't do electronic for council meetings, can we?
We have had on rare time.
I don't think we want to go down that to where we are voting electronically. It's bad for the integrity of the council. It's bad for our citizens to not see our council members at the dais. And we get paid to show up at these meetings, so be it. Don't give us an option.
I'm going to support this. I'm going to support this. So,
Yeah, but then you got to go back and change the charter again, because that was in the charter as well. That's in section 602 of the charter.
well, we're not going back and changing the charter now. The charter's been adopted. So,
the charter overrides the bylaws. So you got a problem right now if that's a concern to you.
all right.
Maybe they can put that on consent calendar.
For the next one.
Actually, I would support that.
I don't know what you mean by put that on consent calendar.
To make the two in sync.
To amend the charter.
We got another special meeting coming up. Christina can make a note to just amend the charter in the next special meeting.
All right. All in favor of this amendment signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
On section 5.1, after minutes, add "and audio, video recordings where
Where
possible."
possible.
Okay, when possible.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we move to
Bruce, you.
Donna.
I just would amend section 3.1 to be consistent with the charter, so that it would be, regular board meetings shall be held on a Monday of April of each year.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All right, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, anyone else? Are we back to the original motion to adopt the bylaws? Discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Nay. Okay, motion carries. So we've completed the regular business of adopting charter and adopting bylaws. We move now to the election. And so for the election, Ally will help me out if I get this wrong, but I believe anyone may nominate an individual. No second is required. If there's only one individual nominated, we will proceed with just a voice vote of acceptance. If there's more than one nomination, she does a roll call vote. Have I got that right? Okay. So we are open for nominations.
I would nominate Debbie Berlin for president.
Okay. And I will nominate Benson. Thought that he has got more time ahead of us on council than the others, except for himself and Dan. I thought that might make sense, given...
I'm not sure how to take that. I would second your nomination of Benson.
So, any others?
You two doing that to us for?
We didn't. There was no pre-discussion on this.
You guys go in the back room and do a thumb wrestle on it.
I just thought to give Benson a job here. That as a longer-standing person on this, it'd be good to have him. And Dan and I didn't compare notes on nominating Debbie. So, roll call vote.
Can I withdraw my name from?
Do you accept your nomination?
No, I do not.
Okay.
Made it easy.
Mr. Wong, do you accept your nomination? Okay. So since Ms. Bertlin has declined her nomination, we now have one nominee.
President Wong.
So if Mr. Bassett would like to go ahead and do a vote.
All right. All in favor of Benson Wong as president, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, Benson, come on over here. You get to get a vice president, and I get to go sit and see. I sat in when I started on this council for a little bit. So. And good luck getting this done by 3 minutes from now.
That's mean.
You're going to give an acceptance speech?
No.
Your inaugural?
I'm
Are you going to swear him in at least to do something?
I don't think so. We're going to stand on formalities here. The next order of business is to elect a vice president. So we are open for nominations for vice president. Jamie?
I nominate Debbie Bertland.
Second.
Is there any other nominations?
I accept.
Okay.
The
Okay.
nomination, that is, I know that. Do that.
Hearing no other nominations, all those in favor of Councilmember Bertland being named vice president, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Congratulations. Okay. The next order of business is ordinance number 1. You have it in front of you.
Actually, if I may interject,
Yes.
we could have appearance.
Oh,
Are we
I'm
having
sorry.
appearances?
Yes, sorry. So we are now open for appearances.
Let them know the usual rules apply.
Well, I think Ira knows the rules.
What are those? Okay, Ira Appleman, 4436 Ferncroft Road. I opposed setting up a taxing district as the third district, a third taxing district on the island, but that's not before us tonight. What's before us is this tax. that now that the district has been set up, then the question is, should there be a tax? And I'd like to just briefly go over the logic, the legislature's logic of what you're doing now. Under the law, you can get whatever you can justify by putting it to a vote. So $20 is an arbitrary number, and you can get, if you could justify it, you could get whatever you wanted by putting it before the voters, and then justify it, and then the voters would vote for it, and you would get whatever you needed. The logic of this is that if you can't justify it, that you can get $20 or $350,000 from islanders without a vote. And I think that's what's going on here tonight. I don't think you can justify the $350,000 or the $20 tax, and that's why you're doing it without a vote. And I think you would increase the credibility of the council if you could justify that you needed the money, and then put it up to a vote and show that the islanders agree with you. But you're not going to do that, because I don't really think you can justify it. The interests that have shown up that this money is going to support are, for example, the bike people. They want bike lanes, and Chip showed how by moving the bike lanes on West Mercer from 7700 block to the 8400 block, that's what's causing the need for $400,000. And so by moving it up 3 years, you're putting a hole in the budget. And the bike lane people came up here, but this has nothing to do with commuting. This is for those islanders who use the Mercers as a racing track. Very few are going to commute from 8400 block on West Mercer. So it's for somebody who wants to race around the island. And the bike people came and asked for that and said that they would be willing to pay $20. And then last time one of the bike people came and said because of the water issue, our infrastructure is falling apart, and so that's why we need this. But really the reason why we needed it is because the bike lane people want bike lanes on the south end of the island. And I don't think that justifies it, and I don't think that what you're doing can justify it unless you try and confuse people into think that this is going to help with potholes, which it isn't. You've got enough money for that. And this is just for special interest things that you can't justify, and that's why we're doing it without a vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who wants to speak on this issue?
I have a question.
It's just
That's not TBD yet, Meg.
not the library.
Is it a city council meeting or?
No. No. That's why Benson's sitting there. It's doing a Bruce imitation.
So that ends our public appearances. So the next order of business is the discussion and possible adoption of ordinance number 1. And Christina, do you want to?
I would just like to, since it's been a while, mention that I had proposed a change to Section 1 of the ordinance, and that is to, in the very last sentence, it would be changed to read, as set forth in RCW 8280-140 and Chapter 3673 RCW. That would remove the reference to 4616 RCW, which I don't believe is necessary.
Okay. Do we have a motion to
Look at this, I get to make a motion. I move to adopt ordinance number 1, an ordinance of the Mercer Island Transportation Benefit District authorizing a vehicle license fee and fixing a time when the same shall become effective.
Second.
Second. Okay.
Mr. President, I'd like to make an amendment.
Go ahead.
On Section 1, change 20 to 25.
Is there a second to that amendment? Hearing none, it fails for lack of a second. Any other amendments? Any discussion?
Mr.
Yes,
Yeah, I'm not going to support this. This is, once again, making the island that much less affordable. And the projects, our tip, which this is supposed to go toward, is consistent with, I think, prior tips as far as when it goes to zero, when it goes negative balance. We've got 2 to 3 years of projects that are financed. The reason that we go negative in those out years, like we have gone negative in the prior, how many tips? 5 tips? 5 budgets? Probably. About 5 or 6 budgets. The reason is because we pile on projects. The way we should work within our budget, and that means scaling back the projects that that we have an appetite for. Reprioritizing for better priorities of government. The answer is not a revenue issue. The answer is on the expense side. And again, this hits the middle class. There's a lot of folks out there. Yes, we have some very wealthy folks on this island. Unfortunately, that's the paintbrush of which this island is painted. We also have many, many middle class folks who are, if you will, house poor, making payment from paycheck to paycheck, and folks that are not fortunate to have a house but are renting apartments and whatnot, and again are from paycheck to paycheck. And this is another item to make it less affordable on the island. Exactly what we don't want to do. We want to make the island more affordable, not through handouts or special programs, but just through one's ability of surviving on their hard-earned paycheck.
Thank you. Any other Debbie?
A couple of points of response to that one. And the first one is, if the discussion is going to lend itself towards affordability on Mercer Island, I think that would be a great time to review those during the comprehensive plan, and we're looking at neighborhood character, buildability, etc. The second thing that I'm not comfortable with is the implication that because you rent, you are borderline middle class or you have affordability issues. I think that's an unfair association correlation to make.
Any other comments? All those in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. All those opposed?
Nay.
The motion passes. I don't believe there's any other...
Thanks, Chip, for this.
That is all we have.
I think you're done.
I think we're done. I think...
High school chairs.
Okay.
Yeah, let's, now we're in the mayor have to, let's take 10 minutes before we start the regular meeting, whatever time is up on the clock there.